Welcome to Creative Tian channel. Today I'm going back to my blanket knitting. We did a tuck stitch blanket not long ago, and people have questions about seaming the trim and calculating textured stitches such as a tuck stitch. So we are going to go over it today. Here is the panel of the side border. I make the purl side matching the purl side. You can match the knit side to the purl side too. So when I fold it over, it will be like that. And at the beginning, I didn't start picking up stitch for the first few rows because it's easier to knit this way. So I can start seaming the top and then go down the edges. And for this part, you just have to seam both sides. I will start from the edge here. And I always like to put some clips just to keep it in place. So I cut a piece of yarn and thread it through a yarn needle. And I will just pick up one stitch from each side. I like to pick up the outer leg of the V. If you look closely, every edge stitch is a chain, so it looks like a V, and I just pick up the outer edges. Make sure it's equal stitches first, or about the same stitch, and then just pick up one from each side. I can go over twice for the first stitch just to anchor it. And I can hide the yarn tails inside the pocket. And for this part, I like to finish one side first and then seam up the other side. Just pick up one yarn on each side, or the one leg of the chain on each side. And for the main part, you can do it stitch by stitch without skipping, or you can skip every other stitches. And again, you just need to keep it consistent. And sometimes it's difficult to see the stitch. You just have to turn it, open up a little bit more, or stretch out a little bit more. You can kind of see the edge stitch always have a longer one, a big chain, and then a small chain or the small knot, and alternating the big chain and the small chain. And the other side depends on how you pick up the stitch. You might look different, but if you see closely, it's also a long line and a small knot, a long one and a small knot, so you can match up both sides. I prefer not to skip any stitch and just knit every stitch. But you can also just pick up the knot and skip the long one, and the same on the matching side. The small knot goes with small knot, and the longer chain goes with a longer chain. Another question I have is about the calculation of the dimension and the gauge. Because this is a tuck stitch, so it's very stretchy. When you stretch it, it will be a very different gauge than when it's relaxed. So the answer is very simple. Depends on your purpose, what you like to see for the final product. You use that as your gauge. For example, when you need a swatch in your intended pattern, and you give it a live steam or a wash and let it relax a little bit. That's the way you calculate it from. You don't really want to stretch it too much. Just keep it natural. And I know it's not very precise. Your swatch and calculation should be used for your design. Whatever the swatch and texture you like, you can use it as a calculation, because we try to use that to calculate your final dimension. I know this can be tricky because it's very stretchy, so it would be nice to have a bigger swatch. A bigger swatch can be more accurate to calculate your final project dimension. And I will calculate the same way as stockinette stitches. For hand knitting, usually it's 4 inch by 4 inch, and find out your stitch count and the row count and calculate from there. And since we are doing machine knitting, you probably have a bigger sample, so you can calculate the same way, find out the total stitch and the total row count to find out how many stitches and rows per square inch. So this is a follow-up video for my 3-part tuck stitch blanket knitting. It seems a simple project, but it still takes time because of the size, and we do have to do a lot of hand stitching. If you have any questions or video suggestions, please leave a comment and I will try to answer them. Thank you so much and see you next week.